Hello, Lothar here. So this video is going to be on local permits, or what I'm going to call individual permits, and how to use them to hike the Pacific Crest Trail. So now is probably about the time where we've just had the second lottery, and the result letters basically should be going out, basically confirming whether or not you've got the permits or not. So I think people are going to be very sort of in a position where they're kind of firming up their plans quite considerably now. If you've got the date you want in terms of a thru-hiking permit, then congratulations, well done. If you haven't yet, you're holding a permit with the imperfect date, then go for cancellations. And if you've been very unlucky and you just haven't been able to secure a permit at all, then maybe this video is for you. It's an alternative to thru-hiking the PCT, and you can hike northbound on as few as 3 permits. And if you're a very, very slow hiker, you probably need a 4th, but I'm going to try and talk you out of that and make sure you're fit, so hopefully we can all hike on local permit with just 3 permits. Things to keep in mind. If you have gone through the lottery process and you are holding a permit, remember it becomes issued, I think it's 3 weeks before your hike date. That means it's assigned to you. That's your permit. So if you don't use it, one, another hiker's lost the benefit from it, but also if you subsequently change your mind later and say, oh, no, I can't use that permit, but I'll hike on local permits anyway, you can't then apply for a PCTA long distance permit, like a 500 mile plus, because you can only have one PCTA permit allocated to you per season. So if you're holding a thru-hiking permit and then you change your mind, all I could ask is please release those permits so other hikers can benefit from that thru-hiking permit. But you must do it in good time, at least 3 weeks, if not more, before your hike date, because once it's issued, it's locked in. And also, for those of you who've got thru-hiking permits, remember to print your permit in that 3-week period before you hike, because once you start hiking, you can't print it out. Okay? Right, let's move on to the real subject of, let's assume you're not holding any permit, or if you've got a permit that you can't use, you've handed it back to the PCTA, you're going to definitely hike on local permits. So how do we do that? Well, there are the 2 main resources that you could look at. You could look at the PCTA website, which has items where it basically breaks down how to hike on local permits, and Triple Crown Outfitters has a document. It's a 15-page document that goes into every single permit. It's kind of doing the same job as the PCTA, but in more detail, but neither of them are fully up to date. They've all got some little minor tweaks, maybe links don't work and things like that. It's a document that's very hard to keep up anyway, but they're good resources to at least look at, and both of them have their merits, and also both of them have their failings, shall we say. Right, so if we're going to hike on 3 permits, there are 3 regions we're going to talk about. Let's talk about 4 regions, and I'll say why you don't need the first one. Cleveland National Forest is the first region where a permit might be required, and it is primarily a dispersed camping permit area. It starts at mile around 13 and goes to mile 53, and then there's another, I think there's another 12-mile section further up. I'll post the mileages here. Now, if you hike through that Cleveland National Forest regions and you don't camp, or you stay in the registered campgrounds, the established campgrounds, then you don't need a permit. If you want to disperse camp, so you will camp along the trail, then you have to apply for a Cleveland National Forest dispersed camping permit. Now, they are limited in number, certainly during the main hike season, but I would urge you to maybe try and get hike fit, so you can hike at least 8, 10, and in the worst case 12 miles when you need to get through that permitted area, so you don't need to apply for a dispersed camping permit or stay in registered campgrounds. Now, I will list here all the registered campgrounds here. So you've got Lake Morena at mile 20, you've got Boulder Oaks, you've got Sibbert's Flats, you've got Burnt Rancheria, which doesn't open early in the season, but it opens mid-season, and then you've got Mount Laguna, and then you're out of the first region of the Cleveland National Forest. So you've got plenty of campgrounds that you can time your hike to finish in the evening and camp in those registered campgrounds. They do all have fees, with the exception of Boulder Oaks, and it ranges from $5 per person, $14 some of them, and then $32 for this is up to 8 hikers if you use those campsites. But I would urge you to, if you're going to hike on local permits, aim to stay in any one of those campsites so you don't need a dispersed camping permit. Now, if you do, if you can't walk very fast and you probably want to do 3 or 4 miles a day or 5 miles a day, and you can't turn on the 10 when you need to, then dispersed camping permit is applied for Cleveland National Forest here, and hurry up and get them because they go very quick, certainly for the ones in the season. But as I said, I'd urge you not to bother. Just don't disperse camp, stay in registered campgrounds. The thing that helps you is that the Cleveland National Forest doesn't actually start from Campo. It actually starts at mile 13. So what a lot of hikers do on local permits is they hike the first 13 or first 12 miles and camp outside the Cleveland National Forest, and there you can disperse camp, and then wake up and then hike into the Cleveland National Forest. You basically go down Hauser Creek and up to Lake Morena, which is about 7 miles, and then you can stay at a registered campground, or you could hike another 6 miles and stay at Boulder Oaks. Plenty of ways in which you can not avoid applying for a dispersed camping permit from the Cleveland National Forest. Now, there is some discussion or queries whereby if you speak to the Descanso Ranger Station, if you are hiking consecutive days, I think they would like people to know who's hiking consecutive days, but then you would have to apply for permits. But the thing is, if you're a day hiker and you're staying at registered campgrounds, then just be a day hiker. Just hike the next day and the next day and the next day, or take a break whenever you want. Then there's no real need, but I think that if there's concern about hikers on trail and there's no records of them, then sign the logbooks as you go through, and then I think you're covering everything that would normally be required. And you won't be alone out there, because there'll be through hikers and lots of day hikers anyway. So let's assume now 0 permits, Cleveland National Forest. You're not going to apply for a dispersed camping permit because you don't need one. Second region. Now, that is at San Jacinto and San Bernardino. That's the first time you've got to start thinking about that is at mile 151.8. That's at Paradise Valley Cafe. And what you do, that's on Highway 74, is you would go to Paradise Valley Cafe and then hitch from there into Idyllwild along Highway 74. It's a very easy hitch. People will say, oh, there's loads of angels and loads of locals who go up and down that road. I've done it the last 3 seasons, that hitch, without any issues at all. You may have to wait for someone to come and get you, but it is very well supported, certainly during the hike season. Once you get into Idyllwild, you can go to the ranger station. Now, the ranger station is not always open, but it has outside a permitting board where it has a map of the region, and you can see the trails. You can also see the camping zones and also the main campsites around the peak of Mount San Jacinto. Now, because you are going to be self-certifying, there are little permit slips outside, literally in the bays underneath the map, and you want to fill out hiking permits for the days you want to hike through, and pick your zones of where you're going to camp. There are campsites at the either side of the peak, which you can't apply for because they're registered campsites. It's literally a site where it's assigned to you with a number, and they go very, very quickly. So don't aim to get one of those. Aim to schedule your hike through that region, staying in the camp zones, and look at the map. Now, I tend to stay at the zones around Saddle Junction, and then I also try and get a permit for the Fuller Ridge campground. That's the kind of things I do. I tend to do that region whereby I hike straight over in one go and literally select the permits that allow me to do that. Now, some people might want to break up that journey. So they might want to hike up a little bit, maybe get to Saddle Junction and then hike down what's called Devil's Slide, go into Idyllwild a second time. But you still have to get a permit by hitching in from Paradise Valley Cafe, because as you hike up towards San Jacinto, you actually enter the permitted region. So you actually need to be holding a piece of paper before you enter that region. You may still go into that region and go back down to Idyllwild again, but you still need a piece of paper to enter that region. So the other alternative itineraries you might want to consider is, as I've said, you could get a permit from the Idyllwild Ranger Station, hitch back to Paradise Valley Cafe, and then start hiking again, back on the PCT. You go up the ridge, go past a place called Patchy Peak, which you may need your snow gear for, go up to Saddle Junction. You've entered the permitted region, and you might say, well, actually, I'm going to go over. I've put my slip, so I'm going to go all the way over. In which case, you've got a permit that will go all the way. You camp maybe at Saddle Junction, and then you go maybe up to San Jacinto Peak, and then down across Fuller Ridge, maybe camp at Fuller Ridge campground or just beyond it. And then you hike down to the I-10, and you've literally gone over the full Mount San Jacinto and the main ridges, particularly Fuller Ridge. You may also decide, oh, I'm going to break up my journey, so I'm going to do my permit such that I can get to Saddle Junction, and then I'll just go down Devil's Slide and go in and stay another night at Idyllwild if you want. And then that time, you then, before you start hiking, you just go to the ranger station, self-certify yourself again to go up the trail, up Devil's Slide, up Mount San Jacinto, across the Fuller Ridge, and down to I-10. There are multiple permutations of how you get over. We can do it all in one go. You can do it down up and down Devil's Slide Trail. You can do it up and down Deer Springs Trail. Some people might even take a break and take the tram, which is slightly off trail, down to Palm Springs and have a break. There are multiple permutations, but the first thing you need to do always is from mile 151.8, you need to hitch into Idyllwild and go to the permitting board and self-certify for the itinerary you want. Hope that makes sense. There is another itinerary I will post just after this section of the video, which is the what I call the bad weather scenario, where you go up a place called Black Mountain Road, and that allows people, if the snow and ice is very severe, that they can bypass the main peak and the dangerous places and get permits to basically go up Black Mountain Road and over the top. Okay, once you get over the I-10, you can disperse camp to your heart's content, because there's loads of miles you can do where there are no permits required, all the way up to the Sierra. And this is where you're going to need to apply for an Inyo Wilderness walk-up permit to cover you for the Sierra hike sections. Now, you can't apply for that because it's not right now, but you can only apply for that 2 weeks. So it's 2 weeks before you want the permit to start. So it is deliberately intended as a walk-up kind of approach. So you can't reserve these, but they're also not limited in number. So if you fill in the permit application for, say, Kennedy Meadows South, which is the most common starting point, and then go, what's the only starting point I should say that you want to take for this, and then you will reserve a permit within 2 weeks before you want to start, that will take you through the Sierra and up to Sonora Pass. That would be your exit point. Now, this is where the Triple Crown Outfitters document is very helpful, because there's one page that basically says these are the fields you fill in if you want to just, if you've got no specific plans to where to camp through the Sierra. This is a suggested itinerary that you can enter when you're filling in that permit. But remember, you need to apply, you can't apply until 2 weeks before you start hiking. So as soon as that 2 weeks window opens, you need to estimate in your head, when do I want that Kennedy Meadows permit to start? And then make your application, and then keep hiking, and then you'll get emails basically hopefully confirming, and then you've got to find a way to print it out. And most people print that out either at the Kennedy Meadows store, ask them, or Grumpy Bears, or you can ask Triple Crown Outfitters to maybe help print out your permit. You must print it out, but it's a very valuable way in which you can get a permit for the Sierra. But it's, as I said, you can only reserve it 2 weeks before you actually want it to start. So that's permit number 2. Brilliant. So let's assume now you've gone through the Sierra and you want to think, well, hang on, Sonora Pass, how do I get from Sonora Pass to Canada? There's lots of little mini permitted areas up that going for that route. The way you cover that is a PCTA 500 mile plus long distance permit from Sonora Pass, which is north of the Sierra, or Sonora Pass, all the way to Canada. The reason why it's good is because there's no limit, there's no quota, because it's not the Sierra. You've got your Inyo walk-up permit, got you through there. So you're now taking advantage of the PCTA long distance permit that gets you from Sonora Pass, which is Northern California, through Oregon, through Washington, all the way to Canada in one permit. So that's your 3rd permit. So when do you apply for that one? Well, this is where you could apply for it right now. If you're not holding any permits, thankfully, hopefully you're not, you could apply for that permit right now, but you'd have to estimate the start date from Sonora Pass. That's kind of tricky. You could apply whilst you're on trail, and that's what I tend to do, but you've got to allow, this is the difference now, you've got to allow at least 3 weeks for them to review it and issue the permit. So this is where you could apply for it now, but I'd probably say the way I do it is when I'm applying for my Inyo walk-up permit, so as I'm coming up towards the Sierra 2 weeks before I go to Kennedy Meadows, I think, right, what would be my estimated date for Sonora Pass, and it's the same date that I'd be estimating on my Inyo walk-up permit anyway. So you could apply for that, apply for your PCTA permit at that time online, so maybe Tehachapi, or maybe a bit earlier, and then you've probably got nice 2 consistent permits that will then match, hopefully marry together on the dates. You may mess it up, but most rangers are not going to criticise you for that. If you get it reasonably good, you should be fine. So you remember, permit 1, Cleveland National Forest, hopefully becomes permit 0 because you can disperse camp. Permit number 1 then becomes San Jacinto, San Bernardino. You must have permits there. Number 2 is the Inyo walk-up permit for the Sierra. You must have a permit there. You can only apply for that 2 weeks before you need the permit to start. And permit number 3 is from Sonora Pass to Canada, which is the PCTA long distance permit, which you must allow at least 3 weeks in advance. So I would apply for it probably at the same time as I'm applying for the Inyo walk-up permit. That's how you hike northbound. That's how you through hike on local, or I could call individual permits. I hope that explanation is okay and reasonable. The good thing is you don't actually have to apply for any specific permits right now, because they're all done on trail. But the other benefit of local permits is you can start anytime you want. That's the thing that they don't tell you. 3 permits. It's as simple as that. Yes, you do have to be mindful of the times and when you're going to be through. You can probably have a few issues at San Jacinto if you can't get the itinerary you want. You might have to break up your journey as you go over Idyllwild. The thing about San Jacinto is probably the one area, there is no one solution that I can give you because there are so many permutations to get over there, but you do it at the ranger station, ideally on the self-certified board. I wish you well. I hope this is helpful. I hope it's not too confusing. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments below and I'll try and address them. I have hiked northbound on local permits and it does work fine. It's a bit worrying a little bit. You think, have I done enough time? You might screw up your date you leave Kennedy Meadows by a day or so, but I think you should be all right there. And the other thing I would say is, if you're hiking southbound, I've never hiked southbound on the local permits, but it is again a combination of local permits and an individual PCTA 500-mile permit. Well, it's a combination of those two. So if you want to do the southbound on local permits, then I'd probably urge you to look at the PCTA website or the Yogi's Triple Crown Outfitters documents on the local permits. Both of them, as I said, are probably overly complicated and color-coded. I really wish they would, between them, actually issue an outline for through hiking on local permits or individual permits. Northbound, through hiking with the local permits and individual permit. Southbound, and hopefully they can not have people trying to work out how do I deal with 5, 6, 7, 20 permits when you actually need probably 3. Okay, I will stop there and I wish you well. I urge you, please remember, as I said before, don't hang on to permits if you're not going to use them, because if it's a PCTA permit, it could block you from applying for a permit later in the year if your plans change. Happy hiking.